class, so today is Chapter 1, Lesson 7, Multiplying Rational Numbers. So let's start out by thinking that supposedly you borrow $8.75 from your parents every week for 8 weeks to cover bus fare and have not repaid them. You can calculate your debt to your parents by multiplying $8.75 times 8. If you didn't have a calculator, you could go ahead and do negative 875 times 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 7 is 56 plus 4 is 60. 8 times 8 is 64 plus 6 is 70. Anytime you multiply a negative times a positive, it's going to equal a negative. So it's a negative $70. That's how much you will still owe your parents. So we're going to look at the product. Another word for product is multiplication. Might be represented with a times symbol or a dot or even two parentheses beside each other. Product, multiplying. So if we look at the product of 2.5 times negative 1.5, so what we are looking at is we can try to use a number line. So if we start here at 0 and we go negative 1.5 2.5 times. So here's 1, negative 1.5. Here's 2, negative 1.5. Now we need to go half of that. So I had followed this. So I was going 1.5. So now I want to go 3/4 of the way, which will end up right here, which means that my answer would be negative 3 3/4. So we're looking at a way to solve these using the distributive property, and that helps explain how this works. So 2.5 times 1.5 is equal to 2 times negative 1.5 plus a half times 1.5. So see, we took this number and split it in two. So then the 2 goes here and the 1 goes here, and breaking it apart so each of those are going to be multiplied by the 1 1/2, negative 1 1/2. Okay? So the number line above illustrates 2. I'm not sure if this is in our view here. There we go. 2 1/2 times negative 1.5, because there are two groups, right, of negative 1.5 and a half a group of 1 1/2. The sum of 2.5 groups of negative 1 1/2 is negative 3 3/4 and is equal to the product 2.5 times negative 1.5. So 2.5 times negative 1.5 equals 3 3/4. So that just is trying to help explain this here. This is the 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, and then that was 2 times, and then a half of 1 1/2. And so you could see even here, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. Half of 6 is 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. So that's how I got right here. Okay, we'll take some more practice at this. Okay, so if we were to look at 4 3/4 times 2 1/2, so we're multiplying positive. So when both factors are positive, the product is positive. So the first thing we want to do is write 2 1/2 as a sum. So we can do that by going 4 3/4 times, now we're just breaking it apart, 2 plus 1/2, because 2 plus 1/2 equals 2 1/2. So this is the same thing, those are equal. And then we're taking each of these numbers and then we're going to distribute it into this. So then over here, using the distributive property, we have 4 3/4 times 2, that's that first one, and then we're going to add that to 4 3/4 times 1/2. Okay, so then we want to just go ahead and multiply. If you can think about 4 3/4 and you're just doubling it, you might realize that 4 plus 4 is 8, and 3/4 plus 3/4 is going to be like $1.50, right? 75, 3/4 is 75.75. So then add those together. Or you could turn this into a improper fraction and then multiply by 2. So to convert this to an improper fraction, you go 4 times 4 equals 16 plus 3 equals 19 over 4, and then just multiply that times 2 over 1. 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2. You can always put a whole number over 1 and turn it into a fraction. 2 times 19 is going to be 38 over 4. Divide 4 into 38. 4 into 38 goes 9 times. 4 times 9 equals 36. 2 are left over. 2/4. This can be reduced. Divide the top by 2, divide the bottom by 2. It's going to equal 1/2. So we have 9 1/2 plus, and so same for this, this is saying, the second one here is saying that what's half of 4 3/4. So if you wanted to use the number chart and find half, that's an option. Otherwise, turn this into an improper fraction. We have 19 over 4 times 1/2 equals 19 over 8. 8 divided into 19 goes twice. There's 3 left over, 3/8. So then we have 9 1/2 plus 2 3/8. So now we need to add those together. To add those together, we need to be able to have the same denominator. 2 goes into 8 4 times, so if we multiply the bottom by 4, we have to do the top. So that's going to equal 9 4/8 plus 2 3/8. 4 plus 3 equals 7. It stays the same as the denominator. And then 9 plus 2 equals 11. So our answer is 11 7/8. So this is the way that the book wants you to do it. If you were to have just taken the original number and turned those into mixed numbers, 4 times 4 is 16 plus 3 is 19 over 4 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. over 2. 19 times 5 is going to equal 95 over 8. If you divide 95 into 8, it goes 11 times. So here's 8 divided by 95, 11, well, okay, so 1, 8, 15, 1, 8, 7, bring down the 0. But really, we don't even have to finish this out because we're just going to turn this into the fraction. So 11 and 7 over 8. You take the remainder and you put it over top of the number that's being divided, and you get the same answer. Okay, moving on to our quick check. So 4.75 times 2.2. Go ahead and try to figure that out and come back to me. Okay, so for the first one, you can see my work right here. You should get 10.45. When you multiply decimals, you count after you get your answer how many numbers are behind the decimal. So here's the decimal, 1, 2 numbers behind the decimal, here's a decimal, 3 numbers. So you start at your last point, 1, 2, 3. This is where the decimal goes, 10.45. So now with the second one, I showed you 2 different ways to do it. The first way, I turned them into improper fractions and then multiplied them together, got 630 over 120. I could have just gone right here and divided both of them by 100, and that would have crossed out the zeros, but I went ahead and divided them out, and I got 5, and 30 was my remainder, and I put that over 120, and then moved over here where I reduced it, so I divided both sides by 30 and got 1/4. So my answer is 5 and 1/4. And then I did show you how to do it the way that the book said, by breaking apart the 8 and 2/5 like you were adding them together and then distributing it into the other one. So then you had 8.1 times 15 over 24 plus 2/5 times 15 over 24. So when I multiplied those out, I got 120 over 24 plus 30 over 120. I divided this side by 30 to try to reduce it down so that I could use smaller numbers and not have to reduce at the end. So I got 1/4, that's right here. I multiplied both the top and bottom by 6 to get 6 over 24 because I needed the denominators to be the same to add them together. When I added them together, I got 126 over 24. I went ahead and divided 24 into 126. That's what I have going here. I got 5 and 6/24. I divided the top by 6, the bottom by 6, and got 5 and 1/4. What you see is the same number as the other way that we did it. Okay, so multiplying negative rational numbers. When both factors are negative, the product is positive. Whenever they have the same sign, it equals positive. So we now have negative 3.2 times negative 4.1. So first thing, we're going to write them as a product. So anytime we have this number, if we multiply anything times 1, it's going to equal 1. So if you pretended like this negative had a 1 in front of it, it could be like negative 1 times 3.2 equals the 3.2. So we're going to write the negative factors as products. So it's going to be negative 1 times 3.2 times negative 1 times 4.1. And then we're going to use the associative property for multiplication. So we are pulling the negative out, and then multiplying that times 3.2 times -1 times 4.1. So we pulled this negative out. So now use the commutative property of multiplication. So that means that we want these two negative ones to be together. We're trying to do similar terms together. So -1, we're just switching that around. -1 times 3.2 times 4.1. And then use the associative property. So now we have -1, and we're going to put it together with the -1, and then multiply 3.2 times 4.1. So -1 times -1 is going to equal a +1. So here we have +1, and then we're multiplying 3.2 times 4.1. And when we multiply those two numbers together, it equals 13.12. So this is a way for you to understand how come a negative times a negative equals a positive, because they cancel each other out and turn into a positive. So now let's look at number 1. So now we've got to look at using the fractions as we're working here. So if we were to do this, we turn them into improper fractions. So, and what I like to do is, I know that a negative times a negative is going to cancel each other out. So I just cross them out and just do 2 3/4 times 2 1/4. But it wants you to understand why we're crossing it out, because -1 times -1 is going to equal a +1. So if we turn these into improper fractions, we are going to multiply, take the denominator, multiply it by the whole number, add the numerator. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11/4, times 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9/4. And we are going to multiply those together, so we have 99/16. Let's go ahead and try to divide that into each other. 16 goes into 99. If we think about, let's try 5. 5 times that, 80. Nope, it can go another time. Go ahead and erase that. Let's do 6. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. So our answer should be 6 3/16. That can't be reduced any farther. Try to do number 2 and 3 on your own. Okay, so for number 2, you should have gotten 23.25. Please be sure to show your work on your notes. And for number 3, you should have got 3 1/5. If you were to have stuck with the 16 or the 48/15, if you reduced that, so 3 goes into both of them, and then that would give you 16/5. I would also accept that as a correct answer. Okay, so multiplying with different signs. When both factors have different signs, the product is negative. Okay, so we are going to find 6.3 times 2.2. So the first thing you want to do is write the negative factor as a product. So if we have negative 1 times 6.3, right, that's saying the same thing as that, times 2.2. So now use the associative property. These two are the same. They both have the decimals. So it's going to be negative 1 times 6.3 times 2.2. So we multiply those together. So now we have negative 1 times, when you multiply them together, equals 13.86. And so then we want to multiply the negative 1 in, and therefore it's going to equal negative 13.86. Okay, so number 1, we have the negative, so we know that our answer is going to equal a negative. 3/5 times 6 times 4 is 24 plus 1 is 25 over 6. 3 times 25 equals 75 over 30. 5 can go into both of those. Equals 6. 5 into 25 goes once, 15. 3 can go into both those, so this could have been that we divided it by 15. Divided by 3 equals 5 over 2. So it could be that your negative, it's negative 5 over 2. If you turned that into a proper fraction, you're going to divide 2 into 5. 1/2, so it's going to equal negative 2 and 1/2. Either one is correct. Go ahead and try to do number 2 and 3 on your own. Okay, so for number 2, you should have gotten negative 10.20. Number 3, you should have got negative 1 and 1/2. I did reduce the fractions from right here before I multiplied them, so you check to see if there are similarities between the cross sections. So this one I divided by 8, so I got 1, and so then if I did it to that one, I have to do it to this one, divided by 8, so I got 2. This one I divided by 3, had to do it to the cross one, got 3, so then I had 9 over 2 times 1/3. You could have multiplied that out, you just are then dealing with bigger numbers that you then have to reduce. So otherwise it would have been 216 over 144. And if you divided 216 into 144, it goes in one time. With 82 left over. 1172. So then you have 1 and 72 over 144. 72 can go into 144. So that would equal 1. 72 would equal 2. So then your answer would be the 1 and 1/2, and then always don't forget the negative. Whoofy, today was a tough lesson, boys and girls. The cumulative property of multiplication lets you change, oops, I forgot an E there, the what of the factors when you are multiplying. The order. That's what we were doing in the beginning, is just changing the order. The product of two negative numbers, so two negative numbers, will never be negative. If you multiply 7 by negative 1 5 times, will the product be positive or negative? So if you go negative 1, so if you're multiplying 7 by negative 1 5 times, so this is the key, 5 times. So if it's an odd number, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, it's going to be having an extra negative, so therefore it will be negative. If it's an even number, you multiplied it 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, it'll be positive. So 5 times is an odd number, therefore it will be negative. Your homework today is page 40, number 5 through 25. Please do not hesitate to come to class and try to work this out with me. This is a tough lesson. Happy homeworking.